November 2016, and I was supposed to be running the PTA bonfire party. I batch cooked masses of meals and labelled everything. And, my mum was on standby to because the kids were quite small at this time.
Yeah.
And the amount of effort and work that went into me going to LA for 5-6 days. But it was the most alive and energised I think I'd ever felt in work.
Katie Flamman, welcome along to the HoLT Survival Guide for Small Businesses. Thank you so much for travelling all the way up to Manchester to see us. Before we get into a conversation, I'd love to hear a little bit about who you are, where you've been, and what led you to here.
Okay, well, I've had a kind of a compartmentalised career, but what I do right now is voiceovers and presenting in person and kind of behind the scenes and live event announcing and basically talking for a living, sometimes on camera, sometimes not. And before that, I still am a mum, but before I did voiceovers, I've been voiceovering for 10 years. Yeah. Before that, I was a mum for 10 years. And did all kinds of random jobs as stay-at-home mums do in that time. And before that, I worked in television news as a multi-skilled, do all kinds of things person. So I started out as a multi-skilled producer. I was a reporter, a newsreader, and then I became an executive producer and a program editor, kind of bossing everybody else around and running news programs. And I stopped doing that when I had my babies. So I've done quite a few things.
So if you sound or look slightly familiar, people will understand why. I definitely felt like that when I first encountered you and we first worked together. I was like, you do have a very familiar voice, but I know that there will be things we might have heard you on, but sometimes it's just the fact that you've got quite a traditional sounding, beautiful accent.
It's very interesting because the trend now, particularly in the UK, is for regional voices, real, if you like, voices.
Oh, so your voice isn't real?
My voice isn't. My voice isn't kind of cool or normal. But
you do sound like a newsreader.
yeah,
very much.
This voice is very popular in Europe and in America because actually they don't want regional accents. They want something that's clear and easy to understand. And it's called RP, received pronunciation.
Yeah.
Used to be the Queen's English. I guess it's the King's English now. But so in the UK, I work a lot on training videos and internal company explainers, particularly where they have large client bases or employee bases who are all over the world.
Right,
because they want a clear kind of unaccented voice.
Yeah.
So it's funny how voiceover trends go, really.
So I'm really interested, and I'm sure you get asked it all the time, but how on earth do you get into something like voiceover works? Because this whole podcast is focused on people who are thinking about setting up a small business or who already run a small business and what we can offer to help them. And voiceover seems like quite a unique and unusual thing to suddenly go, hey, I can do this. There must have been a point where someone said, well, you'd be really good at this.
Well, it joins the dots a lot for me. So I did an English degree at university and I did loads of acting, loved acting and singing and performing and stuff like that at uni. But I didn't know what to do with my life. I mean, English degree could be anything. And I did university radio and stuff like that, but I still wasn't really sure where to go. So I ended up doing a postgraduate diploma in broadcast journalism and I went into the world of news. But don't tell anyone, but I wasn't really interested in current affairs. I had to kind of learn.
No one's watching, it's fine.
But I loved the fact that it was really varied. It gave me so much variety, particularly working on Channel 5 News, where I was like doing all the things. And my very first job was with Channel 1 television, which was like local news for London.
Right.
And I zipped around London in a little car They wanted me to ride a moped, but I was just like, no.
I think I would have said no to that one.
And I filmed all the things and interviewed all the people, and then I turned the camera around and filmed myself, and then went back and we edited it, and they had me news reading and all sorts of things. So it was great grounding for when I went to Channel 5. Sorry, this is a long answer for how did you get into voiceover. But doing that, I was presenting, I was reporting, I was using my voice. But then when I went into news, and then when I became pregnant with my first child, news is really 24/7.
Yeah.
And so are babies. And I didn't want to share the baby with somebody else. Yeah. And so we moved out of London and into the countryside, and I kind of almost like drew a hard line under that part of my life. And I did news for almost 10 years, and then I was a stay-at-home mum for 10 years. And I worked.
It's a change of pace, isn't it?
It's really different. And I did lots of things. I went a bit mad.
I think that's pretty relatable, though. I think, to parents in general, but more specifically mums, there is a real period of often feeling like you've lost yourself to motherhood.
Absolutely.
And your life becomes so consumed by what you need to do for others and all these people depending on you that you do feel like you lose yourself. And it can feel like, well, this is the end of my career as it seems.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm ever going to go back. The world changes in a decade. How far forward does technology and life and people move? And you go, God, how am I ever going to go back to that?
Well, and I had gone from being an executive producer. I was at Sky News by then. They were making the news for Channel 5. And I'd worked on massive stories like September the 11th and shuttle crashes and stuff. And I went from that to cleaning sick off of various people, including myself, multiple times a day. And I was very good at cleaning up sick, actually. But it's not, it's such an enormous change of pace. And you're right, you do very quickly feel, you lose your confidence, you lose your ability to, it's not, you don't lose self-respect, but kind of as a professional person, you kind of do lose that. And I was,
it's hard when you're not like out earning money and feeling like you're materially contributing, even though you clearly are. We are contributing to a household by raising children. We're contributing to society by raising children, but we don't feel it for some reason. And maybe it's society in general makes us feel like we should be doing everything. We get told off for being stay-at-home mums because we're lazy. And if we go to work, we're told we're abandoning our children. You can't win.
It's an absolute shocker.
And you're just there in the middle going, okay, but I feel like I should be working and earning my own money and supporting myself. And yet there is that pull to be at home with your children. We can't win. And it's, the curse of being I'm not saying men don't feel that parental guilt, but there's certainly a lot less pressure for men to be everything.
Well, and for me also, I came out of newsrooms, which were a very aggressive and not in a sort of bullying way, but in a, you have to be on it and you need to speak up and you need to be all over all the things. And if you took a day off, you would, I would obsessively read all the papers and watch everybody else's news programs. So when I went back in, I wasn't suggesting something that somebody would go, oh, Channel 4 did that yesterday.
It all moves so quickly, doesn't it?
And so from a point of view of being out of that environment for 10 years, if you take your eye off the ball for a day, lifetime. You feel like an idiot. And
so you didn't feel like you could go back to news?
I didn't. And I could have done local news, but I also, having done all of the massive national stories, was kind of like, I don't think I want to do a road
feel like
closure
a step back.
or sheep on the loose.
So voiceover came up.
So I decided I wanted something for me. And at this time, my husband was working kind of crazy hours, traveling a lot. He was living abroad some of the time. So I was really full on in charge of the children. And they were 8 and 10. And I thought, I really need something for me. And my friend Nigel, who I was at university with, was an actor and was doing voiceover. And I said, no, do you think I could do voiceover? And he said, well, darling, there are plenty of people that sound like you and they're all very successful. I mean, you could try. So I was like, okay. So I
Not sure how to take that.
Well, I like
you're very generic sounding.
Being given a challenge. Yeah. There's loads of people that sound like you. So the market is saturated, essentially, is what he said. But I did a 1-day introduction to voiceover course in London, and I got some really good feedback. And they said, yeah, we think you could be successful at this. So, but you need a website. That was kind of the main thing I took away from it. So I spent pretty much a year getting stuff together, getting my head around it, doing some online training and making a website. Rubbish it was, but it was
all of our first websites are rubbish. Mine was terrible.
But during this time, all sorts of upheaval. There was a big bereavement in the family. There was my husband was made redundant, and so what I thought would take 8 weeks or something took a full year.
Wow, yeah.
And so in 2015 was when I had my first voiceover job, and I just turned 40. And at that time I thought, what am I doing? I can't, how can I possibly think that I can run a business? And actually, it was a hobby.
Yeah.
Really. It wasn't a business.
And what were the reactions from the people around you that weren't maybe in the acting community when you said, like, I'm going to do voiceovers?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people who do voiceovers are actors, and come from that background. There aren't so many who come from a journalism background, but there are some, and some come from being audio engineers, and then they narrate a few things and people go, oh, actually, you're quite good. So, but the vast majority are actors.
So it's kind of like something that actors do to make a bit of extra money between jobs.
Yeah,
it's not like I am a voiceover artist, that is my sole.
Yes, a lot of people do. A lot of actors do both. I mean, we can kind of talk about how video games are a lot more physical now and mocap and stuff. But there's voice acting and there's voiceover artistry. And a voiceover, I would say, is perhaps, it's all acting because I'm playing the voice of the company or I'm playing the voice of the employee or whatever. But voiceover, I would say, is more like your training video, a brand anthem for a company, an explainer about a product or service. But then that also goes into things like museum guides and aircraft announcements.
I never thought, you don't think about how applicable what you do is in so many scenarios.
And now, as the internet is becoming cleverer and cleverer and into everything, soon your umbrella will talk to you and say, oh, Leah, you're going to need me. The forecast says in 3 hours it's going to absolutely chuck it down.
That's going to be great for my ADHD. I'm never going to forget anything again.
Well, stuff will talk to you. Your fridge will say, when you go out later, don't forget to top up the oat milk or whatever it is, because and that will need a voice.
Oh my gosh.
So
AI is going to create more jobs in that respect because they're going to need people to create those jobs.
I think so, yeah.
What interested me when you just said just now, like at 40, you felt like, what am I doing? I can't run a business. Why do you think you felt like that?
Because of, we kind of touched on it before, losing that confidence. And I'd always worked for other companies. I'd always worked for big news organizations. So ITN for a really long time, B Sky B, they dealt with, all I had to do was do my job.
Yeah.
They dealt with
payroll accounts, taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Marketing the show, branding, all of those things were not something that I'd ever even thought about or really knew about. And I did English, German, Latin and art were my A-levels. Okay. No, I did not do business or marketing.
I don't think much you do at A-level is very applicable in the business world these days anyway, is it?
True.
So much of what you learn is you're winging it.
But you can do business studies. There's a lot more practical stuff that people do, they learn now.
Yeah.
And none of that was even in my wheelhouse. I just rocked up and and created programs that people wanted to watch. So when I started doing voiceover, it was something for me that was just for me. And you said, what did people think about it in the community? I didn't really have a community. There was just like me, and I recorded some demos. I went back to the place that I'd done that one day with and recorded some demos. And we had a big cupboard for coats, and we didn't have enough coats to fit this massive cupboard. So one half of it, a friend came around for coffee, and I said, will you help me turn the coat cupboard into a recording studio? And she was like, sorry, what? So
resourceful.
Yeah. So we took the rail down that had the coats hanging on it, and we put it at the front, and then we put a curtain across the front, and I bought a load of acoustic foam tiles similar to what's in this lovely studio and stuck them on the wall. And I couldn't stand up in there because I was just literally in the cupboard. It was a bit of sort of Harry Potter. And I bought a cheap microphone and audio interface as a bundle on Amazon.
Yeah. And
the cables ran out of the cupboard and into the hallway where I rigged up. We'd got a filing cabinet in the hallway, so I stuck a bit of MDF on the top of that, and I had to go buy a computer because I didn't have a computer. That was my first voiceover booth, if you could call it that. But the actual sound quality was pretty good. It sounded a little bit boxy, but it was okay. And I started auditioning for things. There are websites called Pay to Play. And you pay a fee and you upload your demos and you tell them what your voice sounds like. And then they send you auditions for middle-aged British woman, RP. And I started auditioning and I started booking work. I was kind of like, oh my God, somebody might pay me to do this. But I could only record when either the kids were asleep or nobody would go in the kitchen because it was right next to the cupboard. If people went up the stairs, it creaked. It wasn't ideal.
Do you know what, though? It goes to show, because I think people assume you're going to need loads of money to start a business. Now, not to sugarcoat it, we're being real here. You're a husband, has a very good job and supported the family through the children, so you were able to not work. So I'm not like saying anybody can go out and do this. Not everybody's got a cupboard under the stairs that they can turn into a podcast studio, but you've used what you had and you had a voice and you did a one-day course and you created a makeshift studio. And it probably wasn't a massive amount of money that you had to outlay for all of this.
It really wasn't.
And you gave it a go. And
£200.
And that was the same for me. When I started my original business, my transcription business, I bought a transcription pedal, because you use your feet to start and stop the audio with transcription, so your hands don't come off the keyboard. £60 on eBay. And I had a secondhand laptop that I got for free and a pair of headphones, like an old pair of headphones. And I started my business.
And you
with
managed, don't you?
And I just went on HMRC and registered a business for free. And that was it. I went on Gumtree and placed ads for free ads. And that was how I got my first clients. And people have this. And I saw a thread that was talking about, giving someone £100. Simon Squibb does this thing on TikTok where he gives people money to follow their dreams and helps them to start a business. And it's a lovely concept. And he gets a lot of pushback from people saying, well, you can't just start a business with £100. It's like, well, I did. I was good at typing and I found secondhand materials and I placed a free ad and I just started doing it. And you can do it on LinkedIn, right? You can start building your presence on LinkedIn for zero money, or Facebook or Instagram.
And favours. So like you do a thing for somebody and they'll do a thing for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, my friends were amazing, helping me sort of set up and encouragement and things like that. But actually I did, when I first started, when I got to my first job, it was through doing work experience and working for free. And in voiceover at the beginning, I did start making money, and my outlay of my basic equipment very quickly paid for itself.
Yeah.
And then I was able to scale. And now I have we had a building that had a leaky roof and kind of water pouring down the side of it and stuff. So the whole building got refurbished. But, IKEA now do a mini, it's not exactly a booth, but it's like a desk. I've only just seen it, a desk with a whole kind of bubble thing that comes around so you can sit at your desk and record. And that's I think
That's so clever.
£500.
Wow.
And my booth costs several £1,000s, and I love it. But you can get acoustic blankets.
There are things that
hang
would
them
do
up.
for
There
now.
are loads of things that would do.
Yeah. And I think you need to, if you're going to start out as a business owner, the more resourceful you are, the better you're going to do in business in general.
Yeah.
It's being able to do things like skill swap with people, find solutions to things, find a way to afford things. I used to do it
when I was example.
Yeah,
would do instead of foam tiles.
I used to be super broke when I was first a parent. So I would get credit cards to be able to afford to go on holiday, because I wouldn't be able to afford to save up. And if I tried to put money aside, inevitably something would happen and that money would get used on some sort of crisis that had happened. So I would get credit cards that were interest free for like 24 months and then split that direct debit that I needed, like the holiday, into 24 lots, cut the credit card up, set the direct debit up, and never use the credit card again. So I could afford to pay for it, and I wouldn't get charged interest.
Resourceful and
that
smart.
Resourcefulness, the more you can exercise that even before you start a business, you'll find solutions to your problems, and that makes you feel a lot more safe when you trust that you'll find a way.
Excuse me for briefly interrupting our guest, but I need to tell you about my business baby, the HoLT. I started the HoLT in June 2022 to create a supportive place where small business owners, solopreneurs, freelancers and side hustlers could learn essential business skills at an affordable price, while coming together to network and support each other and our businesses. Every month, members get live Q&As and problem solving on tech, sales and marketing, plus 4 or more masterclasses on skills such as copywriting, finances, sales, social media, branding, mindset, confidence, resilience, graphic design, automation, AI, and so much more. We also host weekly community calls to meet fellow members, content creation hours and monthly wellbeing circles, and in everything we do, we encourage collaboration, regular communication, and most essentially, mutual respect and kindness. The HoLT is where the square pegs of the business world fit perfectly. So if you've never felt like you quite belong in business, we're the community for you. Visit the-holt.com for more information and to get on the waiting list now. We're opening again soon, and we'd love for you to join us. Now, back to our guest.
That's safety is really important, and having that control, because when I first started and I was starting to book work and things, and it kind of grew, and at this point my husband was sort of consulting, and he was advised to start a company, a limited company, and he was doing consulting, and we put my voiceover stuff through as part of this, an arm of this sort of creative limited company. But I had no idea what that involved. I didn't keep track of receipts. I didn't. I mean, it was absolute shit show. It really was.
I can relate. Yeah, I mean, even now my accountant's constantly chasing me for receipts I forgot to keep.
I'm much better now. I take photos of them. And I now have somebody who says, what's that for? And where's the receipt for that? And quite quickly that person says it. Lovely Sarah. And actually everyone needs a Sarah in their lives, I think.
Yeah.
So, but at the beginning, it was such carnage that first year when we had to do accounts. I was kind of like, what? So, what do I have to do? What?
You just don't realise, do you? Like you say, when you're working for a company, you take it all for granted because the work's just there. You come and you do your work. Yeah. And then you go home at the end of the day. And yes, you might be thinking about your job. I'm not saying employees, it doesn't stress them out when they're at home, but there's such a weight involved when it's on your head. Like, if you don't do the work, you don't get paid, the rent doesn't get paid, you get kicked out. What if you don't get a client? And not only are you doing your client work, which you forget, and I see this with business owners all the time when they're new, they allocate Monday to Friday to all of their client work, but they don't leave time for sending invoices, chasing invoices, doing admin, managing their emails, marketing the business, having sales calls, and you're like, oh, where am I fitting all this in?
I do a lot of recordings, and actually the recording is the tiniest part of what I do. Then there's the editing, which again, if it's a big job, I now outsource, which is a joy. Editing is not my favorite. But I do it a lot because it's usually easier. If it's not I have ADHD and I don't like long projects that drag on and on. I like short things. I like variety. So
instant gratification. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And the same with news. You do it, it's done. You go home. You start again the next day with a fresh thing. So when I have longer projects, it actually really does hurt my brain. I recorded my first factual audiobook kind of this year about marine fuel delivery. I know all about the bunkering industry, Leah, if you're interested.
Maybe save that for next time.
It was so long. Oh, it was so long. Thank goodness somebody edited it for me. I've forgotten what I was talking about, sorry.
But so you've been doing this for 10 years now, or nearly 10 years. And I'm all right to say that you're nearly 50 now.
I am.
Not that you don't look a day over 40.
Not to tell anybody that.
Okay, right.
But yes.
But in that 10 years, like you've gone from being, and I'm not going to say just a mum, but internally you felt like I was just a mum for 10 years. Obviously, incredibly valued work that you're doing. And you've raised two beautiful kids. Yeah. But you do have that like, oh, but I'm not doing anything more than that. And I should be, and I want to be. And you overcame this whole, I'm going to start something new at 40. This is quite scary, but I'm going to do it anyway. What would you say has been the biggest change for you? Because I see a lot of women, and I was 35 when I totally pivoted my business. And at 39 now, like I'm going, well, this is actually going quite well. And I'm almost excited for my 40s because of what's happening now. I'm like, okay, 40s is going to be fine. Like this is going to be great. I've got so much to look forward to in the next 10 years. But so many people do feel like if they haven't chosen their career by the time they're 30 and they're on this trajectory for directorship or multi-millionaire status with their business, that they're never going to do it. And you're walking, talking evidence that actually you can. There are so many amazing examples. You just have to look around on LinkedIn for a lot of people that are restarting careers, going back to uni in their 40s and 50s. And you're like, wow. And I'm inspired by that as somebody that didn't find my, I suppose, talent and my thing until 35, and you found it at 40, and now at 50 you're a name in your industry now. You're nominated for awards. You're doing some incredibly prestigious work that we can't even talk about some of the stuff because you're so NDA'd up to the eyeballs, but it's impressive stuff that you're doing. What's that been like in terms of like the success that you've seen? How's that impacted you in like inside, but also your life beyond work?
So it's funny because I did it, as I've said, as a sort of a hobby. And one of the first jobs I booked was for the British Council in 2015, 2016. I can't remember which year, but it came out. It took a while for it to come out. And it was to celebrate 400 years of Shakespeare.
Oh, wow.
And I recorded a whole series of Shakespeare plays, but kind of written for kids, so in really simple language. And I was the narrator in half of them, and I played all the female characters. It was so cool. It was just like little cartoons and created by this amazing studio in the UK called Slurpee Studios. It was brilliant. And it was such a brilliant job. And I heard this thing in a podcast, a thing called the Voice Arts Awards. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to enter. And it was $100 to enter. And I put in the film I'd made about Shakespeare's life, or I'd narrated. This lovely cartoon. And it got nominated for a Voice Arts Award in 2016 in Hollywood.
Wow.
And it was like, so at the time, it was November 2016. And I was supposed to be running the PTA bonfire party at school because I was head of the PTA at that time.
God, what a choice to make, Hollywood or PTA bonfire.
And my husband said to me, are you sure it's not a scam? And I was like, well, I don't think so. I think it's real. But I said to the mums at the PTA, now look, this thing has happened.
That conversation.
Yeah, this thing's happened. I don't know if this is real, but I think it is. And quite like to go to Hollywood instead of doing the bonfire. What do you reckon? And they were all just like, for goodness sake, go. And I mean, I had the best time, and I didn't win, but they read my name out in the Warner Brothers studios in Hollywood.
Oh my gosh.
I was on the red carpet. I've actually been fortunate enough to go several times since, and I've been a presenter there, and I've won a Voice Arts Award now, and it's just this amazing gold statue thing. It's just
imagine if you'd gone to the bonfire instead.
Well, yes, but that gave me the confidence.
Yeah, that was the first big decision where you chose
myself,
yourself, and your future and your career.
And I batch cooked masses of meals and labeled everything, and my mum was on standby to because the kids were quite small at this time, and the amount of effort and work that went into me going to LA for
can relate
5-6 days. I mean, the jet lag was unbelievable because I went for the minimum amount of time I could, but it was the most alive and energized I think I'd ever felt in work, apart from perhaps those times when I'd been in a live newsroom and some kind of mega event was happening and I was running the show. That was energizing and exciting. But going to all that way and just being me, and not my children's mum or my husband's wife or my mother's daughter or the cat's mum. I was just me. And what having my own business has given me is that feeling of being totally my own boss,
being in all control of your own destiny.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, I have been really lucky to work with some kind of big names, Volkswagen, American Express, Google, Chromebook, all sorts of brands have trusted me to deliver their message. But I would quite happily record answer phone messages for the butchers down the road as well. It's offering a service and doing what I'm good at, but feeling like this is all mine.
I think it's such a powerful feeling. I know, I mean, when I had the transcription business, I don't think I had that feeling because I was very much struggling to make ends meet at the end of each month. And it was a case of am I going to cover everything? I wasn't energized because I didn't earn very much. And I think when you're charging very small amounts for what you do, or it's a service that you just don't get paid that much for, it can be quite hard to find that motivation. You still do it because you still need to pay the rent, but you don't really get excited by it. And I wasn't passionate about it, but it's quite clear that you are passionate about what you do. And I became passionate when I pivoted and started doing the LinkedIn training and the community building and genuinely helping people. And I felt like I could see the impact of the help that I was giving on a daily basis. I was getting that instant feedback from people saying, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that. I've just tried this and it's worked. And I've got this new client. I've got this new client. And I'm like, yes, it's working. I'm so happy for you. Here, try this as well. And I needed that back and forth, which I didn't really get with the clients and the typing work. And that was what spurred me forward massively. But I completely understand like the confidence that it gives you when you work with a client and you get happy clients coming back to you saying that was brilliant, or they refer you on to another job and you're like, I did this. Nobody else did this. This was all me. I can't turn around. It's like with your children. You raise your children and someone says, oh, they're so polite. They're a real credit to you. It lights you up. And you get that same feeling when you do something in business and someone says, thank you so much. That was brilliant. We'd love to have you back, or you did an amazing job, or they send you a gift or tip you or something like that. You get that, oh, I did this, all me. And that brand, that whether it's your parenting or whether it's your business, your brand lives on. People talk about you when you're not there in a good way. And it's really precious to have that. And I have sessions where they book me for an hour and we're done in 10 minutes because the first take is exactly what they want. We do a few changes of the beginning and the end, and the clients trust that they're going to get what they need because I understand, because I've done the work in advance. I've prepped the script. I've asked the questions. I've researched their business, so I know the feel. I've asked the right questions, and actually what I've given them back is 45 minutes, which is super precious. Yeah, no one's upset about that.
They've got exactly what they want. And it's not a question of, well, hang on, I paid you for an hour. We've moved on from that to wow,
it's the value.
That is precisely what I needed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We don't need anything else. You're amazing. And it's glorious when they say that.
I love this conversation because I think the key that's come out from me in listening to you, and it's really made me feel validated as well, is that especially as women, but generally speaking, there isn't a too old to start again. And some people who might be older than 40 are sitting there going, yeah, but 40 is nothing. 40 is very, very young. You could start again. I'd have started again at 40, but now I'm 55 and I wouldn't. But you'd now at nearly 50, you would start again, right? If you
definitely. And I've got other plans for other things.
And that's the beautiful thing, because I've known you now for 4-ish years since we worked together initially, and we sort of became friendly. And I've seen your confidence grow over the last 4 years. I've seen you change. I've seen you putting yourself out there more. I've seen your content develop online, and you've become more and more Katie, and confidently so, and bringing your own unique style to everything that you do. And it's beautiful to watch. It feels like when you're watching someone kind of come out of like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Yeah. And I feel like when you start a business, you definitely feel like you are in this little chrysalis, and it's a very scary world. And is it going to hurt me when I come out of it? Are people going to judge me? Are people going to think I'm rubbish at this because I'm just starting and I'm a total newbie and I don't know what I'm doing? But actually, the vast majority of people, on social media included, they're not judging you because they remember being there. And actually, the vast majority are there to give you a leg up, because we all know what it was like. And that's one of the reasons we have the community, right? Like building the HoLT community was creating that safe space for people where we are all intent on lifting one another up and not judging the silly questions. There aren't any silly questions. And it's just beautiful to see that for someone who did start fresh in a completely new career that had ties to the old one, but a totally new career at 40 years old with 2 kids at home still, and you found the thing that you excel at, that you've doubled down on, stayed passionate about. And like, I'm genuinely excited to see what happens for you over the next 10 years, because it does feel like this was the warm up.
Yeah.
Does that feel like that to you?
Yeah, I think that's true. And people, what you were saying about no stupid questions and safe space and stuff, that's super important. And it's been a journey, you know. Yes, it's been 10 years, which it's escalated year on year. It's got bigger and faster and more, and I've won more awards, and I've had bigger, better clients, and people have come back to me and recommended me and all of that. And suddenly it kind of goes exponentially, and I'm able to recommend other voices if my voice isn't right. And there's lots of other services that are kind of branching out from that initial thing. And yes, it's been a journey. And if I was to look back at kind of 10 years ago me in the coat cupboard and just think, whoa, you've come a long way. But you're right, it does feel like a warm up, and a sort of, as my kids got bigger and I could leave them behind, I could go and really try and develop my presenting career and get back on camera and leave the house. Because when I'm working from my studio, I'm literally working from home and able to pause my recording, go make somebody some dinner, or go pick them up from the bus stop, or whatever it is. But now they can almost drive. So
it's amazing.
So as my family is becoming more independent, my career is as well. And it's a kind of mutual growth. Everybody's growing, everybody's exploring new things and developing new passions, and that sort of solid foundation is, of course, still there. But I mean, I would say you are never, ever too old to explore and try something new, and just don't be scared, because you can't do it all at the beginning.
No, it's got to be consistent improvement day on day, right?
Yeah.
And it's not always going to be a forward motion. Sometimes we have to take a few steps back,
absolutely,
to be ready to go forward again. I think you're a testament to your patience and consistency within your industry, and learning your craft to a really high level, and maintaining that passion. And I think it's a really great message to send to people, that it doesn't matter if you've never done it before, and it doesn't matter what age you are. If you want to start something new, try, because for me,
What have you
I
got
always
to lose?
think about, like, what am I going to regret more, trying and failing or not trying? And I'm like, I always know that I would be on my deathbed going, I really should have given that a go. Not, I gave it a go and didn't work out. I'm always proud of myself for trying. And obviously you tried and made it a huge success. So I'm very happy to see it. And I'm excited to see what happens over the next 10 years for you, if you'll have me around that long.
Well, let's do another podcast episode, shall we?
In
a
10
decade
years' time.
and
See where we both
we're
are.
at.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Katie. And it's been a pleasure to chat to you. And this one's been, once again, very well behaved.
So quiet.
I know, just occasionally panting down the microphone.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real joy chatting with you, Leah.
Always fun talking. Thank you.
Welcome.
Before you go, I just need to tell you about our brilliant podcast sponsor that aligns so well with our own mission at the HoLT. While seasoned podcaster Wendy C was consoling a friend about a toxic workplace experience, she realised that workplace abuse is so widespread, and yet so many people are suffering in silence, often alone. Safe Space from the Workplace is a new podcast for everyone. If you find yourself in a toxic workplace, you're a leader or business owner feeling out of your depth, or you have a friend or family member struggling at work, this podcast is for you. Wendy will be talking about everything workplace related, including survivor stories and speaking to experts specialising in tools to cope with burnout, discrimination, redundancy, grievances, medical issues, women's health, and so much more. The podcast aims to empower employees and educate leaders and business owners, and help people who find themselves in toxic workplaces to realise that they're not alone. Subscribe to the Safe Space from the Workplace podcast on the links below. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.